Psalm 29, and we'll read it. I could read it in either version, but we'll read the New King James. A Psalm of David. Give unto the Lord, O you mighty ones. And notice the word Lord, it's in blue, and it appears 18 times. Yud He Vav He, Yahweh, his name. Moses says, who should I say you are? What's your name? That's the word right there. Okay, so it's God's name. Give unto the Lord, O you mighty ones. Give unto the Lord glory and strength. And give to his name. Give unto the Lord the glory, due his name. Worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. The voice, the first two verses are really about like just an introduction, and now the main purpose of the psalm. The voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. The Lord is over many waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is full of majesty. The voice of the Lord breaks the cedars. Yes, the Lord splinters the cedars of Lebanon. He makes them also skip like a calf. Lebanon and Syrian like a young wild ox. The voice of the Lord divides the flames of fire. The voice of the Lord shakes the wilderness. The Lord shakes the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of the Lord makes the deer give birth and strips the forest bare. And in his temple, everyone says, glory. The Lord sat enthroned at the flood, and the Lord sits as king forever. The Lord will give strength to his people. The Lord will bless his people with peace. It is a psalm about the voice of the Lord. I'm flipping over to page 2 there in the middle of it, just to show you that it's almost verbatim from 1 Chronicles 16, which is the story where David is, Michal, his wife, gets angry because of how he dances so hard that his undies show. Okay, and so she gets upset. But that story there is the background of 1 Chronicles 16, and it's almost exactly verbatim, which gives thought to the idea that this psalm is somehow connected to the story when David is bringing the ark back to Jerusalem. There's some context. What does Sonsino say? Because I don't read a lot of Messianic scholars. I read the Jewish scholars, and I read church scholars, and I do this. I like Messianic scholars, but they're doing the same thing that I do. I like them all. I hope you listen to all of them. I do. But that's not what I don't go to them because I do the same thing they're doing. So Sonsino is just a Jewish commentary. Okay, that's all. It's not Messianic. A thrilling description of a storm. A verbal symphony in which the shattering peals of thunder reverberating around the hills are reproduced with words with realistic effect. A Hebrew poet, however, could not rest satisfied with a word picture. I left the word not out. Could not rest satisfied with a word picture. His religious genius induced him to interpret the thunderclaps as the majestic voice of God. The psalm is included in the Sabbath liturgy. That's the prayer book, the authorized prayer book, pages 111, 157. According to the Talmud, in the tractate Berechoth, the 7-day Sabbath benedictions correspond to the 7 voices of the Lord contained in Psalm 29. Therefore, the closing word, peace, coming at the end of a poem is particularly apt for the day of rest, which introduces a spirit of calm after the storm of everyday life and conflict. So the psalm ends with shalom, but the thing is all about this storm. So it's like, what a great way to end a psalm. Okay, so I'm flipping over to page 3. And in the middle of the page, the Jewish Study Bible. Again, a Jewish book, not a Messianic book. Not a word in it is written by a Jewish believer in Jesus. The basic theme of the psalm is built on the combat myth, known in Ugaritic and Mesopotamia, and reflected in other biblical passages, in which the hero god defeats the forces of chaos and is then acclaimed by the other gods as their leader. Now, what are the Ugarites? Just a little heads up. What that is that's the language of the Amorites. So that's, in other words, that we're talking about pagans. Okay? So he says the basic theme of this psalm, according to the Jewish Study Bible, is built on a combat myth known in pagan culture and reflected in other biblical passages as well, in which the hero god, our God in our case, but in their liturgy, their hero god defeats the forces of chaos and is then acclaimed by other gods as their leader. The Psalm 29 shares with Psalm 24 the themes of God's triumph over the forces of chaos. The primeval waters, that's an interesting phrase right there, primeval waters, I'll talk about that. And God enthroned as king in his temple. Psalm 29 is used liturgically on the Sabbath when the Torah is returned to the ark. And then I wrote, the above quote is very similar to that which Christians call the gap theory. The general idea is that ancient Israel believed that Genesis 1 is not merely the story of the original creation like what Christians think. That's not the primary way that Jewish people will look at this. Not that Jewish people don't believe. They do believe that God is the creator. But that's just not the primary thought, not the point of Genesis 1. Okay, that's Jewish Study Bible's bringing out here. Okay, the thought is that Genesis 1 is telling the story of a time when the primeval waters, I said I would come back to that, when the waters, the storm, this rebellion, this mess, whatever caused it, rebellion or not, whatever it was, whatever caused it, and there is this battle, there is this mess, and God shows up in Genesis 1, and he defeats the enemy, and he gives order. This is Genesis 1. And he gives order to the whole cosmos, and he puts Leviathan down. And this is why in Jewish thinking in the Talmud, what are we going to eat at the marriage supper at the end of the age? Well, we're going to eat not the marriage supper of the lamb, because Jews don't believe in the marriage supper of the lamb. They have a marriage supper. They have a final banquet. And what are we going to eat at it? Leviathan. I have no idea. Okay. So this is the story of God fixing. This is why in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void. How could the earth be without form? The word means confusion. How could the earth be with confusion when God is not the author of confusion? And how could God create light, and how could he have separating the light and the darkness when God is light and in him there is no darkness at all? So how did he create darkness? You see the point there? Where'd the darkness come from? Where'd the confusion come from? These primeval waters and the Almighty, who created everything, yes, but that's not the point of Genesis 1. But yes, he did. What he did was he showed up and he just stomped on that enemy and stomped on Leviathan and stomped on the primeval waters and brought order. And that is the story. And that's why I say it's pretty similar to the gap theory. It kind of is. It's called a Psalm of David. And somebody said to me this week, what's the difference between a psalm and a song? I thought, that's a great question. I'll just put it in here because there'll probably be others. There's never a situation where you're the only one who has the question. That doesn't happen. What's a psalm? Psalm is the Greek word, psalmos. And the Bible, the Psalms don't have because psalmos is a Greek word. It never occurs in the Hebrew Bible. The word mizmor appears in the Hebrew Bible. They are mizmors, songs. And the Bible, Jews don't call it the book of Psalms. Why would they? It's a Greek word. If you're Hebraic, you will. Jews will call it tefillah, or tefillim, plural, because they're praises. Okay, so, but this is just linguistics, and I call it the Psalms. I do. And a million of us in the church will. And I don't live by this. It's got to be Hebrew versus Greek. The New Testament's written in Greek by Jews. So I totally reject this idea that you've got to go with Hebraic rather than Greek thinking. Wrong. That's just wrong-headed. There's no value in that. Jesus constantly quoted the Septuagint, the Greek Bible. The book of Hebrews quotes the Septuagint. And when there are differences between the Septuagint, the Greek, and the Hebrew Bible, almost completely the New Testament will go with the Septuagint, which was the primary Bible of the day when Yeshua walked the earth. That doesn't mean he didn't speak Hebrew and all the disciples didn't speak Hebrew. I just think this bifurcation, though, between Hebrew versus Greek, the New Testament's written by Jews who in Greek. So that's just, I appreciate the desire to be connected with the Hebrew roots. That's me. You can see the word psalmos in Ephesians 5, verse 19, speaking to one another in psalms. That's the word right there. Okay, so there are three parts to this psalm. Verses 1 and 2 is the call to praise. And then comes the praise of the Lord's voice. And then comes the concluding praise in the psalm. Page 4. Give unto the Lord, O you mighty ones. Give unto the Lord glory and strength. You're going to see now why this psalm works with this primeval kind of thing and that genre. It's going to go, oh, I see where this psalmist is coming from. Okay, first of all, this word ascribe, or this word give, is really the word ascribe. And think about ascribing. It's like drawing a line around something. I've ascribed it. In other words, the point is give to the Lord and to him only. It's like in the circle. That's where I'm giving it. Give unto the Lord, O you mighty ones. Give unto the Lord glory and strength. In other words, it's within the circle that I'm going to give that. That's what it means to ascribe. Okay, and it's a word that also, it does mean give. It's a different word for give than the word you'll find in the last verse of the psalm. In the last verse of the psalm, that word is natan. It's the common word. This is not a common word, but it's a word that means to give. So give unto the Lord this uncommon kind of strength and glory. Give it to him in an uncommon way. Okay, and then it addresses these mighty ones. Now, who are these mighty ones? The actual Hebrew word, and you've heard me talk about this a little before, but here it is. It's this word, Elohim, which is, when you think of the Hebrew word for God, that's the word, Elohim. So, and the word is plural, okay? Jewish Publication Society, and in all of their Bibles, which would mean the Jewish Study Bible, it says, ascribe to the Lord, O divine beings. Now, there's nothing about what I'm saying that's not monotheistic, but it's not in the nice little neat box that most monotheistic people have. It's in ancient monotheistic thinking, okay? So the word Elohim is the word in Hebrew for God. There is only one all-knowing, all-powerful, all-present creator. And his name is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, Yahweh. And in the Aaronic blessing, God says, that Tim read to us, the Aaronic blessing says, this is how you're to bless my people. You're to speak my name over them. The name Yahweh. Put my name on them and they'll be blessed. And so the Bible here is saying, give to Yahweh, O you Elohim, O you divine beings. Now, okay, so sometimes it helps me. Let me just kind of, on the bottom left of that page, you can just see different ways where this word Elohim is used in the Hebrew Bible. Okay, Psalm 82:1. I taught on this little The Lord comes right out of when we did Psalm 82. God stands in the congregation of the mighty. He judges among the Elohim. Well, there have to be other Elohim if he's going to judge among them. So the word Elohim is not a word that only refers to our Trinity God. It's a word that must refer to more, because how else could he judge among them? There are other Elohim. They're just not omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, and the creator of everything. The Elohim is a broad term. It is used in Genesis 28:12, where the angels of Elohim are ascending and descending on the ladder, and the Lord stands at the top of the ladder. But the angels ascending up and down are called the angels of Elohim. Okay? Judges 11:24 uses Elohim of the Chemosh, the Amorite idol. Clearly not the God of Israel. Deuteronomy 32:17, God is complaining to Israel that they are offering sacrifices to demons that he calls Elohim. The word Elohim does not only mean God. Our English word, English God, means what we all agree and understand it to be. There is one God, he's all-knowing, he has all knowledge, he's everywhere, he's the creator. That's English. That's not Hebrew. Okay, so when we put that on Hebrew, we're making the Bible say what we want it to say instead of what it actually says. Okay, there's only one creator, all-knowing, all-knowledgeable, all-present. There is no word like the English word God other than his name. His name. That's where you go. Okay? So 1 Samuel 28:13, when Samuel is raised by the witch of Endor to King Saul, the disembodied spirit is called an Elohim. In Job chapter 1, verse 6, the sons of God appear. So it's this divine counsel. And what it is, and there's a great, I put it on the right side of the page. You can see in blue, see Michael Heiser's book. And there's also a podcast that he has. You can go there. Heiser calls this the Deuteronomy 32, 8 and 9 worldview. And the idea is that God, in ancient Hebraic thought, rules the heavens through a council. Just like he rules the earth through a council. He put Adam on the earth to rule the planet with him, as he is the source of life. And Revelation says that we will rule and reign with him for 1,000 years. God rules by divine counsel. That's how he chooses to do it in heaven. It's how he chooses to do it on the earth. He is the omnipotent, all-knowing, all-created. He's it. But the word Elohim does not only mean him. And that's the word for mighty ones. So have you seen them? How many of us have seen Avenger movies? Okay, I like the Avenger movies. So this past week, Donna was watching Thor. And the first Thor is one of my favorite ones. Okay, there's one scene in that movie I really like. Okay, do you remember, I don't remember her name, but the lady who Thor falls in love with?
Jane Foster. Yeah.
No, it's not Jane Foster. That's it, Natalie Portman. Thank you. Now there's an Avenger fan.
Oh, you wanted the real name.
So Thor loses his power, right, for a time in the movie. And when he gets it back, and she looks at him, and she says, "Oh my God." And the people of Asgard are gods. They are, now in the context of this conversation, they are Elohim. They doesn't use that word in the movie. In the context of this conversation, they are Elohim. But there's another scene, and I don't know if it's that movie, one of the Avenger movies. It has to be one of the Avenger movies, not Thor. I think it's probably the first Avenger movie. When the Hulk gets a hold of of Thor's stepbrother. And he says, I'm a god, Loki, right? And Thor grabs him and just goes, boom, 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 boom. And then the next scene, this guy is like laying on the ground. And Thor says, puny god. So he's an Elohim, if you will. He's not all-knowing, doesn't have all power, but compared to you and I, he does. Right? So I kind of like that movie because it kind of captures something here. So in the bottom line, top of page 5, God rules the heavens with a council of beings. And likewise, God's plan for the earth was to rule with Adam, not to rule Adam, but to rule with Adam. Ultimately, we will reign with Christ on the earth. So Psalms 29:1 uses the phrase sons of God with a double plural. The mighty ones, sons of God, double plural. The exact same phrase appears in Psalm 89, verse 6. For who in the heavens could be compared to the Lord? Who among the sons of the mighty can be compared to the Lord? That's that same phrase, sons of the mighty. The question in Psalm 89, verse 6, same phrase, in that last part of that thing, who among the sons of the mighty can be likened? The question would be a ridiculous, unnecessary question if there was nobody to compare him to, if there were no other sons of the mighty. You see the point there? In other words, the answer to that question is none of the sons of the mighty can be compared to this one. Does that make sense? None of them can be compared. Are there other Elohim? Yes. Can they be compared to this one? No. Does that make sense? We're going to stop here in a moment. I'll go to 5:15. Verse 2. Hey, we got to verse 2. Give unto the Lord the glory due his name. Worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. What's this phrase, beauty of holiness? It's the same phrase you find in Psalm 96, verse 9. Oh, worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. Tremble before him all the earth. So whoever these things are that are to worship him in the beauty of holiness in Psalm 96, verse 9, they're on the earth. They're humans. So in verse 1, the psalmist is calling on the beings in heaven to worship Yud-He Vav-He. And in verse 2, he's calling upon the beings on the earth to worship Yud-He Vav-He. The one. And the voice of the Lord is over the thunder. The God of glory thunders. His voice is over many waters. And the voice of God is like thunder. It has power over the natural world. Psalm 18:13. The Lord thundered from heaven, and the Most High uttered his voice. And you'll find the same kind of thing, Robert Alter on the right side there. The Lord's voice is over the waters. You'll find that same thought in that little paragraph there. Another Jewish, not messianic writer. Though the image is a naturalistic one of thunder, often imagined by the Hebrew poets as God's voice, rumbling over the sea, the line registers as a recollection of an old Canaanite myths in which creation is affected through the conquest of the primordial sea monster by the God who rules the land. In the incremental repetition here, the phrase the mighty waters has an especially mythological resonance in Hebrew. And so there's this battle that's going on. And let me just kind of throw some things out because we're going to run out of time. There was this Ugaritic god called Yam, sea god, and he was in Ugaritic writing conquered by Baal. And Baal is the god of thunder and lightning and fire. Remember the story of Elijah on Mount Carmel when he says the God who answers by fire, and that was a battle against Baal, and Elijah's taunting the prophets of Baal. Your God must be sleeping. Wake him up. Maybe he's in the bathroom. That's actually what it says. Okay? So Elijah's taunting the worshipers of Baal. But in the Ugaritic writing, Baal conquered Yam, the sea god, And what this psalm is saying is, our Yud-Hey Vav-Hey, he defeated Baal, he defeated Yam, he defeated them all, and they all ought to worship him. That's Psalm 29. And so let me just go to the bottom of page 6, just kind of just jumping right ahead. Just kind of have going. You can see on all on page 6, there's all this warrior picture of Yud-Hey Vav-Hey. He thunders as a warrior. In Joshua 10:11, more people who are the enemies of Israel are killed by the hailstones from him than by Joshua's army. And then you got the Song of Moses. He sings, the horse of the rider thrown into the sea, the Lord, Yud-Hey Vav-Hey, he is a man of war, right? And Deborah talks about the earth trembling. And Yeshua comes back to the earth with a sword in his hand and the blood splattering under his feet. He is not a mamby-pamby God. He is a warrior God. So you look at all the names of God on the bottom. Adonai, it's really Yud-Hey Vav-Hey, Tsavaot. Adonai Rapha, Adonai Yaira, Adonai Roi, Adonai Shammah, Adonai Nisi, Adonai Shalom, Adonai Sidkenu, Adonai Mikadem. These are all Old Testament covenant names for God. And notice how often they appear, except for that one name, the warrior name. God says, I am the warrior God. I'm the one that defeated Baal. I'm the one that defeated all of the mess at the beginning, and I'm the one that's going to defeat everybody at the end. That's the God of the Bible. Just a couple things I'll just throw out just to call your attention to. Notice on page 7, it mentions in verse 6 Sirion. Well, Sirion from Deuteronomy 3, verse 9 is actually Mount Hermon. Okay, the Bible just tells us that. It mentions Lebanon in verse 5. So Lebanon is north of Israel. Mount Hermon is the very north point of Israel. On the east side, think of the Jordan River. So you've got the Jordan River is basically it's the Rift Valley. This is like my class that I was just in Israel. The Rift Valley that is between the hill country on the west and the Transjordan on the east, and so you have the Jordan Valley. And so it's basically the rift, the African and the Asian plates, geological plates, and so these things, they move, creates earthquakes, right? And so the psalm is basically, it mentions at the beginning, or in the psalm, it mentions Lebanon, it mentions Mount Hermon, that's up here at the northern tip, northern end of the rift. And then at the bottom, it'll mention Kadesh. They used to think Kadesh is in the Sinai Peninsula. And now the latest things are, it may not be in Sinai, it actually may be over in Saudi Arabia. And the best scholars now no longer believe that Mount Sinai is in the Sinai Peninsula. They now actually believe that it's in Saudi Arabia. So the psalm, and I gave you a little thing, patterns of evidence on the bottom of page 7. You could watch that. So I haven't seen it, but Donna watched it. While I was in Israel, so I said, oh, I'll give it to the people. So what this psalm is basically doing is taking this entire, from north to south, and it's basically saying, the voice of the Lord can shake the planet. No matter what kind of battle you're in, one word from God. It doesn't mean that there are no battles. It doesn't mean that there's no spiritual enemies. It doesn't mean that they don't have power. But compared to Yud-Hey Vav-Hey, they're all puny gods.